Hi there. Welcome to the first ever virtual Partnership for Excellence. I'm Palmer Jackson Jr., Chair of the PFE and the Foundation Roundtable. In our 26th year, this convening of Santa Barbara County nonprofits and foundations has been continuously sponsored by the Foundation Roundtable. These 40-plus community and private foundations fund projects and organizations throughout our county. A big thank you to our 2020 sponsors, which you will see listed on the PFE homepage of this event. Like so many other events, we were sadly forced to cancel our April event at the Alisal Ranch. Now, our hope with this three-part virtual series is simple: to reconnect our social sector colleagues and partners at a time when community interactions are limited and we're working in new ways under extreme conditions. Today is designed to bring us together in networking and conversations around our theme, navigating complex decision-making. I want to thank a few folks, our dedicated partners, the Nonprofit Resource Network, the PFE Advisory Council, Ruby Road Leadership, Judy Hawkins, Visionality, our panelists coming up here soon, Steve, Kristen, Eder, Petra, and our moderator, John, and more than 20 community volunteers who will host your breakout conversations today. And I missed one thank you. I also want to thank you, A Busy Woman and Life Chronicles. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Judy Hawkins, our producer. So Judy, take it away.
Thank you, Palmer, and good morning, everyone. I just wanted to spend a few minutes orienting you to the space where you are. You have probably self-oriented for the last few minutes here on the Excel Events platform. So this event that you're watching right now is like a Zoom webinar. So that means that for this section of the day, only our speakers have access to their mics and cameras. So we actually cannot see all of you right now, but you can see all of us. You can engage with us during this session. So if you look over on the right side of your screen, underneath your blue name bar, you'll see some controls there. So there's a chat. There are polls, which we will orient you to in a moment. There are people where you can see other individuals who are on the site right now, and there's a Q&A. So we'll invite you to use the Q&A during the panel to ask questions, which I will bring forward to the panel. You can post in the chat anytime, particularly if you need any kind of assistance or if you have specific questions. But if you could direct your panel questions to the Q&A tab, that would be great. We have technical staff on hand all day. So this part of the program, this panel conversation, will be about an hour, so until about 10:35. Then you will move into the community rooms to join a 35 to 40-minute breakout conversation on your choice of topics. And then the morning program will end after those breakouts at 11:30. So there's no reconvening back in the space where you are right now. The end of your breakout will be the end of your morning. And this site will remain open all day. So the features that we'll be explaining to you a little bit later, you'll be able to use all throughout the afternoon if you want to connect with individuals or have small group convenings. And then we will have an informal happy hour at the end of the day from 5 to 6 p.m. Back on the site. So please plan to come and join and engage the day as it makes sense to you. And we know just a bit of framing about the day, that there's so much going on right now, right? So much movement, so much shifting, overwhelm, uncertainty, worry. What a time that we're gathered here for PFE. We're in it together, as I've heard a lot of people saying. And at the same time, we're isolated too, right? And we're having different types of experiences in this moment. And what we know about all of you is that you're a talented, values-driven workforce, that you're passionate, that you're big-hearted. And so today, as you enter this new world Excel platform, just want to invite you as you step into this panel to let go of whatever it took to get here today. And it's a lot. To be curious about this new panel. Go ahead and press on some buttons, see what happens. It's pretty safe. Just don't press on that one that looks like a phone. Do not phone home, because that will exit you and then you'll have to log back on. But other than that, be open to listening to new ways of connecting one another. As Palmer said, that's really our intention today, is to provide opportunities for you to connect. So we welcome you to do that, to share and to relate and to learn and to be generous with yourself. It's okay if it gets a little confusing or a little bit silly. Just please stay in it together. And lastly, our tech team, just so you know, is ridiculously friendly. So please don't be afraid to put a question or anything that you need in the chat, and they will step up and be of assistance to you. So that's what it's there for. Today's theme is navigating complex decision making. I bet you all know a lot about this already. It's inspired really by all of your efforts to innovate, to expand, to recover, to serve emerging needs in our communities during this time of complex crises, right? So how are we doing this? Where are we? Where are we stretched? Where are we in expectations? When's the end of this unending uncertainty? And where are our leaders and staff and boards adapting and collaborating in new ways? So that's what we're up to exploring today in this panel. And these panelists have agreed to really share their organizational perspectives, their own stories with you. So let's welcome our panel. Moderating today is John Clark, James S. Bauer Foundation SAGE President and member of the Foundation Roundtable. Welcome, John.
Thank you very much. Really great to be here.
And our panelists, please also welcome Steve DeLira, Deputy Executive Director with Family Service Agency of Santa Barbara County. Eder Gaona-Macedo, Executive Director, Future Leaders of America. Welcome. Petra Gomez, Program Manager with the Santa Barbara Foundation. Good morning, Petra.
Good morning.
Kristen Sullivan, Executive Director of the Towbes Foundation. Welcome, Kristen.
Good morning.
John, take it away.
Great, thank you. Okay, so want to welcome everyone on the call. We got to move a box so I can see Steve and Petra here. Want to welcome everyone on our conversation today. Over 150 of you have decided to take time out of your really busy schedule to be with us today, and we hope really we're able to have a conversation that is relevant to what you're doing, relevant to your work, perhaps entertaining, but interesting, and a conversation amongst ourselves and a conversation with you on these important topics that will hopefully lead to more conversations and work during the rest of the day and in the weeks and months ahead. So we're going to start with a little multitasking, which you're probably, if you're in your office, you're probably already doing that anyway. So we're just going to add a couple more things to you. So what we'd like to do is to encourage you to move to your polls button on your column on the right-hand side of your screen. Judy will correct me if I get any of this wrong, and you will see 4 questions that we invite you to go ahead and answer right now. Question 3 is for funders only, not because funders are special in any way, just because they're the ones that have the answer to that question. So you go ahead and answer that, and we will use that information in the conversation ahead for the next 40, 50 minutes. While you're doing that, I'm just going to chat for a little bit to give you a little time to go ahead and answer those questions. So that's the multitasking part, and then talk a little bit about the next 50 minutes, and we'll get rolling into it. So so you go ahead and get started. I'll start chatting. And really, I think what I wanted to say more than anything else for today is for the people on our call and for the people in the audience, really thank you. I thank you for not just being with us, but thank you for your work during these times. Running a nonprofit is hard. It's really hard. It's an organization and a business. It has HR and legal and finance. That's in and of itself is hard. You have your mission to serve, and then, you know, to bring all that together, you have to deal with fundraising and funders, and it's challenging in good times, and these aren't. So I really appreciate the complexity that everyone is dealing with. And, you know, more than that, I'm going to share a story, a personal story that I hope points to what I really appreciate from the people on this call and the people in our virtual space together. So my mom is 84 and she lives in town. She lives in the house my dad built when he retired from the Army, and, you know, she's 84. So she lives alone and she has what she needs. You know, she's safe, she has food, but she's pretty isolated these days. You know, she's got to be careful. She can't volunteer. She can't go to the concerts. She doesn't see her friends very much. She doesn't see her grandkids very much. She doesn't see me very much. And she watches a lot of TV. She is somewhat of a political junkie. She watches the news, and it's just dark where she is. You know, it really is rough on the news. And I totally try to talk her out of it, but she won't listen to me. So, you know, I call her when I go home from work pretty much every day. And it really is sort of like, you know, a scene out of a movie like My Dinner with Eeyore. You know, like it's really, the first thing she does is really let me know things are far worse than I think they are. You know, it's really going to be bad. And the next thing is she has choice words to say about politicians she doesn't feel very close to. I can't share them all. I mean, her favorite these days is the fornicator. So that's the most gentle word she uses. So it's pretty much of a 10-minute download. And my primary job is to listen. I'm her son, and just to let her vent, because I think that's important. But I do find at the end of like 10 minutes of that, like I kind of don't know what to say to her. Like, thanks for sharing, you know, it's not that bad. I don't know. So a while back, a couple months ago, she, at the end of that, asked me how my day was, which was nice. And it turned out I had just gotten off the phone with one of you all. I think it was Kathleen from Transition House. So I said, oh, well, let me tell you about my last phone call. And I talked about work, the work that you all do. In this case, I think it was how Transition House was changing the way they do their work to stay open. And at the end of the call, she said, thank you. That's really nice to hear. It's nice to hear something, you know, positive in this world, particularly for her, where everything is just dark and gloomy and powerless. And even last night on the way home, she asked me what was going on. And I told her, since this was on my mind, I told her about Eder and the work FLA has done, and, you know, what they're doing in these times. She said, you know, that is good news. Like, you're right, that is good news. And all of you out there, you are the good news in tough times. So really, I think from all of us and all in the community, thank you so much for being the good news in tough times. Really, it's a very special group. So thank you for that. So we're going to get rolling to one of those people that's part of the good news. My good friend and colleague, Eder. You know, Eder, you saw maybe you saw the polls, and there were sort of four. The first question was, you know, how's this life been for you? Are you doing the same thing? Are you doing fewer things, same thing a lot more, or like crazy, totally different stuff? So how would you have answered that question, Eder?
So good morning, everybody, and thank you to PFE for having me here today. Really blessed and honored to tell our story. I think I can tell you the story, but I would also have to tell you that what we're doing is very personal to me. I grew up undocumented here in America, and I was also a student with Future Leaders of America. And so there's a lot that goes into the work that we do, that I feel and that my staff feel, that sometimes isn't, that sometimes we don't speak about. And so when COVID-19 started to make its way to the West Coast, we knew that there was going to be social distancing orders. We just didn't know what impact it was going to have on the youth that we work with, but also the families that we work with. We started to see news out of New York, out of China, out of Europe, and started to kind of wonder what that impact would be on our organization. Couple weeks before stay-at-home orders, we started to cancel fundraisers. We started to cancel in-person events, and that was really difficult because for us and for our staff and for our board, frankly, we worked months to get all of this programming out. It doesn't happen overnight, and so for us to pull people together and be able to put on big fundraisers takes a lot of energy and time. And it was really difficult to just start canceling everything because one, it was our income, but two, our relationships with the students that we put at the forefront. And then we started to look at the economy. We knew that there was going to be a recession, that markets were just tanking, and it was just such a difficult time that a lot was happening so fast. And as an executive director, I had to be in constant communication with my staff and my board to kind of figure out how we move from here. What does it mean to work from home? We've never done it. Our work is to work directly with students and their families. And so we started to do cost-cutting efforts to save some funding, but then we also started to look at work from home orders. And at first it sounded great, it sounded fun, but we just didn't know what impact it was gonna have on our staff. With our partnership with the 805 UndocuFund, we also knew that there was gonna be undocumented families who were gonna be disproportionately affected by COVID-19 and the stay-at-home orders. So we got the 805 UndocuFund back up and running, and with the support with the collaboration with Cost Markup and the McCune Foundation and Ventura County Community Foundation, we started to look at what a COVID-19 would do. We had done it before as a response effort for Thomas Fire and the Wolseley Fire, but never to the extent of COVID-19. We did a soft launch right after the stay-at-home orders, and over the weekend, without even making an announcement, we had over 1,500 people sign up for financial assistance. We went back and started to look at how much money we needed to raise, and we realized that we wanted to make sure that we provided the same amount of funding that the federal government was providing to every other individual in this country, $1,200. And so we left the wait list, we left the registration list open. And after 1 month, we had about 7,000 undocumented individuals who signed up for support. And we, as Future Leaders of America, we hosted the 805 UndocuFund. And from one day to another, we went from having 14 staff to staff about 20. The capacity and the amount of work that we had to do was just on a different level. The response was on a different level. And not only that, we also were being targeted by individuals who thought that what we were doing was immoral or illegal. And we had a lot of individuals who were calling us and telling us that they were going to hack our systems to take the list of 7,000 individuals. We also did a lot of advocacy work with the students. I would get emails saying that I was a racist or a bigot for only carrying people who had my skin color. And it was just a very difficult time. It was a very dark time. But at the same time, I knew that we had to keep pushing because we needed to get the dollars out. Fortunately, with the support of our 805 UndocuFund steering committee, we were able to raise $5 million. And to date, we've distributed about $2.5 million to undocumented families in Ventura and Santa Barbara County. That's taken a lot of effort. It's taken a lot of volunteers. It's taken a lot of know-how of technology. Unfortunately, because of stay-at-home orders, we couldn't do sit-down interviews like we had done in the past. So we needed to figure out a safe and encrypted way to be able to talk to individuals and be able to release the funding in a timely manner. And so we had to train our staff. We had to retrain our staff on using these new technologies, but we also had to make sure that community also knew how to use them, because unfortunately, a lot of our community still may not have access to a telephone or internet. So we had to get creative. I think the hardest part was definitely in figuring out how to also take care of our staff. Our staff are all first generation nonprofit professionals. A lot of them are first generation college students. And for a lot of us, this is our first real big disaster. Um, and we just didn't know how to respond. And I think what made it even more difficult was being a person of color led organization. Systemically, people of color nonprofits are systematically underfunded. And that was a concern on the FLA side, making sure that that we still had the dollars and the commitments from foundations, all while still maintaining the 805 and DocuFund afloat, and making sure that our staff were doing, their tasks. And what was really, I think, disheartening or just overwhelming was that we were living this in two ways. As people of color, directly affected by COVID-19, economically, and seeing our families go through it, even sometimes seeing our families go contract COVID-19 because they're essential workers. And also looking at our families struggling financially. And then being able to push out the work. I know one of my favorite moments in the last 8 months has been being able to interview some individuals, but then personally deliver a check to one of my family members who hasn't been working since March. And, I did get teary-eyed and I did cry because there was just so much in that one check that my relative needed, but also felt loved by community and the people who made this happen. And so there was a lot of complexity, and unfortunately, a lot of people don't see that. In terms of our media advocacy, we've gone above and beyond to put this out there and try to change the narrative. A lot of individuals think that Latinos or even undocumented immigrants don't deserve this type of financial assistance. We've been called future dishwashers of America. We've been targeted for having bad kids. And most recently, we had a grant at the county level, and we had individuals calling the board of supervisors saying that Future Leaders was too Latino or too political. And yeah, it does hurt. And we have to decide how to respond to that. So with our board, we're now working on looking at how we respond, but also rebrand ourselves as a nonprofit here in Santa Barbara, Ventura County, because the values that we hold aren't going to change. If anything, COVID-19 has just given us another reason to keep advocating and keep pushing for these policies, because our communities are definitely hurting.
Thank you, Eder. I know, having known FLA for a long time now, how it's just amazing how far you all have come in responding to the needs. And 5-6 years ago, I would have associated FLA with trauma camp, and that was sort of it, and those cool blue T-shirts. But and someday those will all come back and play. But it's so much more. And how has that been? Well, I guess part of the question, and you've answered it, like where do you guys find the inspiration amongst your board and staff to do that work? Like what keeps you going through some really difficult and in many cases completely unfair response to that? Like where do you find that?
Yeah, we're very intentional with how we recruit for board members. Right now, the majority of our board members are alumni of our program. They understand what our community is going through. They understand what's happening. They themselves have family members who might be undocumented, who have contracted COVID, who are struggling economically. And so having that direct contact, or even ourselves being facing the brunt of the storm, keep us motivated, keep us going. I know all of our staff, yeah, we're tired, but we also have very rich relationships with our students, the families that we work with, and collectively we're able to push through. I think that we're also on our side trying to make sure that our staff are taken care of. we're doing mental health internally. We're looking at creating a culture that embraces mental health and that destigmatizes what mental health is and support out there. We are looking at end of the year retention pay to make sure that they also they don't know this, so surprise, so that they're able to also know that they're valued, because the work that we're doing is difficult and sometimes can be very thankless. And then we also keep in contact. I know that we try to keep each other afloat. We support each other through every policy fight, through every the negative response that we get, and really hold each other because what we're doing is definitely worthwhile and needed in our community, as seen by the response that we've been getting recently with our COVID-19 response efforts.
Great, thank you. In just a second, we're going to turn the conversation and focus on allies and support. But Judy, maybe this is a good time for you to share what the results of question 1 were in terms of the audience's response to the question that Eder answered so well.
Sure. And Eder, I just want to, when you're done sharing, I want to direct you to the chat. There are lots of accolades and acknowledgement coming in around your work and Future Leaders of America, and I want to make sure that you see that. For the question about how has COVID transformed your work, I do want to hold up and thank those of you that that tapped into the chat. We neglected to clarify in this poll for organizations who are more severely affected by COVID and have had reductions in services or have been completely closed. So we were thinking that would be taken up in choice number C, which is same basic services, but we've had to cut back because of COVID restrictions or lack of funds. But in looking at it, it would obviously be beyond that if you're not able to provide any services because you are a closed museum, a closed theater. So thank you for those of you who lifted up that clarification. So with the questions that we offered, less than 2% of our attendees have had no great impact. About 27% providing more services than ever of their existing service profile. 18% have had to cut back because of COVID, but are still offering the same services or programs. And over 50% have added new services or programs never imagined before.
Wow. So to the panel, I guess, just real quick, does that last part that's a lot of people doing things that they didn't think they would be doing at the beginning of the year. Does that percentage surprise any of you? How does that fit with your experience and what you guys are seeing in your colleagues and around the community? Anybody want to take that? So
I'll chime in.
Yeah, you're at the Santa Barbara Foundation. You guys see a lot of things. So does that fit
Yeah.
Santa Barbara Foundation?
The percentage, unfortunately, doesn't surprise me. That's a lot of what we've seen. What we pride ourselves in is to ensure that we are constantly communicating with the community to ensure that we're understanding the needs. And so we have seen that in our nonprofits, that there has been a lot of pivoting. And so I do want to thank all of our nonprofits in the community for the work that you do. We know that we wouldn't be as strong without you. And so thank you for your work. And I know it can be taxing, and we truly value and we see the great things that you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you, Petra. So Eder, you guys are doing such great work, and you can't do it alone. And you talked about funders. So, during this time and as these changes, and you have existing funders and new funders, like, what would you say? Hey guys, here's what we need from you. This is what we need from you. So how would you answer? How would you respond to that?
Yeah, definitely unrestricted support. For the last 6 years, we've definitely beefed up our funding on many levels, including our programmatic support. Our funding at the beginning of my tenure 6 years ago was at $150,000. Now we're at $1.2 million, and that's a lot of hard work, relationship building. But I think what's needed most is definitely the unrestricted support to build out our administrative support internally. We have a lot of program staff that are doing great stuff, that are on the front lines, that are fighting the good fight, and working with students, but we definitely need back-end support. And with the Ventura County, with the 805 on DocuFund, the Ventura County Community Foundation has done an amazing job. So thank you, Vanessa. I know you're out there in helping us build that infrastructure for the 805 on DocuFund, because weekly we're processing 100 checks, which means that our bookkeeper has to take time to get this done. But on the FLA side, we still need to make sure that we get our stuff done. We're going through an audit right now. I had an audit call yesterday. And we want to build up our communications team, because we know that this is important now more than ever, and we want to build up our fund development. Right now, I'm currently doing most of the fundraising on the FLA side, 95% of it, and we need to make sure that we can sustain this for the long term. I can keep going. I'm pretty energized, but I want to make sure that we have a sustainable model for future leaders for the long run.
Great. Thank you. So Kristen, I know you guys have a relationship with FLA, and hearing from what Eder says, this is what we need. How would you respond to that? And how does that fit your conversations with other nonprofits that you connect with?
Yeah, first I would like to thank Eder just for your amazing presentation. Your honesty and your vulnerability and your resilience and leadership are just a testament to your work and a reflection of our community. So thank you for that. When COVID hit, we were hit surprisingly hard, and we weren't expecting it. As a foundation, most people think that foundations are endowed and they have buckets of money. And for us, that wasn't the case. Our money, our resources come from real estate. And as everybody started working from home, commercial real estate started to be impacted. And that really impacted us. And so, Eder spoke about, not now, but previously, about, having to call funders. Well, I had to start making calls to our nonprofit partners and have discussions with them and conversations about what we were going to do in light of our reduced resources. And so I called Eder and I told him the situation. We had a really honest conversation. And I said, we're shifting gears. We're focusing on basic needs. We're trying to protect vulnerable populations. That's what you're doing. We want to support you. What do you need? And Eder heard what I said. And instead of saying, give us unrestricted needs, like he just said, he said, support the 805 DocuFund. And so he stepped aside to so that we could work, we could put our money where it was needed most. And in return, we had an ongoing conversation that we would, continue to support FLA later in the year when we had a better understanding of where our funds were going to be at. And I think it was just that conversation and that willingness to do what's right and what's needed in the moment is just so important. And to be honest and truthful and transparent. I just have the utmost respect for Eder and FLA and what they're doing, and just his ability to, see the bigger picture, understand the limitations of funders, but also be able to prioritize the needs. And I'd say I've had similar conversations with, nonprofits, just about what their needs are. How can we help? If we can't fund them, can we shift our program related grant funds to general operating support? And we've really been trying to be as flexible as possible. So I just really appreciate the conversations and the openness and the honesty and transparency.
It is so hard to have, the funder grantee relationship is transactional, and to have a relationship that you hold up to be as important or more important than the transaction is tough. It's tough. It's tough when you need the money, and it takes some guts to be able to do that.
Yes. If I may, I wanted to to echo what Kristen said, the importance of the partnerships and also having those very open and honest conversations. I know in our grant making team, when we first opened the COVID joint response effort grant, we started in March, and our immediate focus was the emergency needs given the current situation. And so our grant making team, is constantly in contact with the organizations who are submitting the applications, and it was very important for us to be able to share that. And I know, we had conversations with Eder too at the beginning, and when we provided funding, and along with other organizations, we talk about, okay, we're focusing on emergency needs, and it was also very important for us once we opened it up to operational expenses, was to reach out to our nonprofits and to do another marketing push to let organizations who had previously applied, you're eligible either again or to be reconsidered. And so we're happy to be able to one, be meeting the emergency needs, but also the operational needs.
Great. Thank you. So Judy, maybe it's a good time to report out on questions 2 and 3. How do people respond to those?
You've got it. So question 2 was about how flexible are our funders and donors with grants right now. We got a big 0% on not flexible. So so that means that is happening. Maybe Kristen, by your example, just about over 59%, close to 60, somewhat flexible. So allowing some changes on a case-by-case basis. And just over 40% extremely flexible, working closely with nonprofit partners to respond to needs as they emerge. So just about 60-40 there between somewhat and extremely flexible. And the question specifically to donors and funders here today, how have the current crises shifted your giving? So 37% more funds being donated right now. 43%, about the same giving or granting as before, and 20% are giving less funds now than in the recent past.
So Steve, I want to ask you, does that surprise you, sort of the response, sort of the funders' response in terms of flexibility in your experience at FSA? I just realized it's FLA and FSA. I could really get that wrong.
I think that first I want to say, Eder, I'm sorry to hear what you went through as a person of color and family members that are undocumented also. It was very difficult to hear your journey, but also it felt good in my heart to hear your tenacity, your will, and your commitment to serve our community. So I want to thank you. And John, thank you for saying that we are the good news. Because it's very difficult out there, and what a wonderful opportunity to tell people the work that they're doing, that is good news. And we do have, we see a lot of trauma, but we are the good news, right? All of us collectively, all of us, right? So the golden circle is what we do may be different, and how we do it may be different, but our purpose is the same, and we all share that purpose. And I think when it comes to that purpose, our experience with our funders has been that we have to be flexible during these times because the needs are changing. The needs of our community are changing. And while we focus on basic needs and we focus on mental health services, as more and more needs for the seniors come up and more isolation comes up, you're talking with your funders about how we can meet the needs of our seniors. Or when the phone calls start coming in because the parents need clothing, because their children are gaining weight, because they can't go outside, or there's no more school or interactive, and now school's starting and their clothes are tight and they're uncomfortable. Or when you see the child sitting on their bunk bed and there's no desk, and they just have their little iPad or their little device that they're doing their schoolwork on, and you see all the blankets and everything piled up, and that's where they go to do their work. Well, then you go to your funders and you're saying, we need little laptop desk for these kids. So when they're sitting on their bed, they can put their little tablet on something to do their work. So our experience has been with our funders has been really great. I think somebody had mentioned it. It truly is a partnership. And it really is coming back to the table and saying, this is what we're seeing. These are the needs in our community. And across the county, you know, having the agency all the way from Carpinteria to Guadalupe, you're seeing different needs, and then you're seeing common needs. So our experience has been great with our funders. The collaboration, the outcomes, the meeting the needs of the community has really been great.
Great, thank you. And you guys, I've had the honor of working with FSA for a couple of things during the last few months, and I know you guys are both stepping up to community needs, but part of your story is you've changed some things internally at FSA to deal with these times, and maybe you could share some of that experience as well as part of your organization's change and transformation.
Thank you. One area I think that we're real strong in is we have Survey Monkey, where staff can put in information or ask questions anonymously. So they can make suggestions, or they can give us feedback, they can give us criticism, and we'll take it and we'll respond to the staff. So one area that we focused on was, how are we communicating with our staff? So we actually started daily meetings with the admin staff, if you will, the leadership, the supervisors, and the managers. And then they slowly went to 3 days a week and to 2 days a week. And then we also started to have weekly meetings with our staff. And so everybody can join into the Zoom meeting. We can hear what's going on with the agency. We're communicating what we're doing as an agency, what funding is coming in, where are the changes. And the staff are also telling us, what are the changes, what are they seeing, what's going on in our community. So having the daily meetings and having the weekly staff meetings and the survey led us to hear more about the staff saying, well, you know, when school starts, one of the problems I'm going to have is childcare. And how am I supposed to do Zoom meetings when my kid is doing Zoom meetings? And how am I supposed to have the confidentiality in some cases, right? When I still have to provide supervision for my child. So we offer childcare in our facilities, and you can come to work and bring your child and check out one of the virtual offices. And we have staff that are working with your child and helping them with their Zoom, helping them with their homework. I think one of the most precious moments we had was a young child did not want to go home. At the end of the day, he wanted to stay more with our instructors and our teachers, because the little kid felt the love and the patience and the guidance, you know, that they're missing from school, right? Because they want to be there with their friends. We also bought the Calm app. So our staff were telling us a lot about the trauma that they're seeing and that they're facing out in the community. And so we wanted to exercise some self-care for our staff. And so one way to do that was to buy them all the Calm app. And if you've never used the Calm app, and I have no stock in Calm app, but wow, is it just amazing. There's music on there, there's story time, there's the white noise where you can just put down, if you want to meditate, you can meditate. And so the person that personally had the Calm app before we bought the Calm app for everybody, it was very helpful. And it can just take you to another place. If you just need to escape the whole pandemic thing that's going on right now, you can do that. Another area that we did with our staff was we started to do reflective supervision. So we wanted the staff to be able to talk about what's happening and be able to communicate back and forth and have this flow, if you will. Somebody once said to us, you used to have to be flexible, but flexible breaks. And so now we need you to be fluid. And just that whole concept of being fluid and going out there with our community also is very helpful. So yeah, we absolutely listened to our staff when we started to have the racial and ethnic equity issues that came up. Our staff, wanted us to put out a position statement, and so we listened to the staff. We worked with them to make sure that it was reflective of the agency, just not reflective of the administration, but the staff felt like this is a true reflection of who they are. And then we posted it, and we've been working on making sure that we address that issue. So what we're learning is, during this pandemic, all of us are learning this, and that is life goes on. you get a phone call that some kid has cancer, and that mom is still dealing with the pandemic, dealing with the kid not being in school, and now the child has cancer. And so some of the partners we've developed, have given us funding. And so we've been able to use that funding to help families. And so I'll never forget one day when a lady came to pick up her check, she left. And when she left, she came back and she was in tears. And she said, "I think you gave me the wrong amount." And we had to say, we're just a distributor of the check. It's not us that actually wrote you the check. And she said, "Well, I only asked for a couple of $100, but this check is for $1,000. And my son has cancer, and you don't even know how much that is going to help us." And just the emotion and the tears, there's so many stories out there. So I think John or somebody had said at the beginning, collectively, together we got this. We all have to be in this together. We use Eder services, FLA services. We use everybody, right? And we help people that we can, and then we know that we get referral sources to us, but we also refer out to other agencies. It is a true collaboration of everybody coming together, the funders, the providers, the public sector, private sector, everybody working towards a common goal, which is to heal our community. And so when all this is over, right, somebody once said, we isolate today so that tomorrow when we gather, no one is missing. And I think that's all of us, right? We're all trying to do work so that we can all be there tomorrow to serve our community.
Well, thank you for that, Steve. I really appreciate that. And I know we have a question from the audience I want to get to in a second, but Petra, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. Here we go. You have a countywide look and a diverse board, and these are interesting times, and a lot's up, and a lot of people look at the Santa Barbara Foundation. So, Steve talked about communication between staff and board, and how you communicate out about what's going on in the community. And I'm just really curious, how has that been at the Santa Barbara Foundation during these times?
Thanks, John, for the question. Well, within the Santa Barbara Foundation, we really do have, a board that is supportive, that our CEO and our executive team is constantly communicating with to ensure that they're informed. We have a multi-committee structure within our board. And so we use those committees as an opportunity to ensure that we're providing information and educational sessions to our board, so they're informed. And then also our partnerships with the community and the nonprofits, what the information that we receive from them is something that we also share with the board, so then they understand the community needs. And so due to that understanding, that support, we were able to, as I mentioned, since March, early March, we were able to work with Santa Barbara Foundation, United Way of Santa Barbara County, and the Hunt and Parker Foundation to lead a countywide collaborative, and along with members of the Foundation Roundtable. And so as of October 13, we have a total of 34 funders for a total of 17.4 million. And so it's really important to our board. It's important for us, like I mentioned, our partnerships, our relationships with the community, in addition to our funders, to really ensure that we're meeting the community needs.
Great. Judy, there was a question from the audience.
Yes, thanks, John. So this was back to the issue around funding for operations. So the question is, non-frontline organizations that want funding to be recognize that funding should be prioritized for frontline organizations, but are also themselves finding real fundraising challenges and wondering if any of the COVID fund opportunities will allocate any distributions. So for operational support for non-frontline organizations.
I think that might be for Petra.
Judy, thanks for the question. I will make sure I take that question back to our organization. So I should have prefaced as well that I have been with the foundation for 7 months. And so I started when the shelter at home occurred. And so the leadership from our foundation are currently all in a meeting right now, discussing community needs and what we can do to support the community. So I can definitely take that question back, and we are constantly self-reflecting and having these conversations. And so that's a really great question. Thank you.
Great, Judy, maybe you could share the final question. We had a sort of a conversation about boards, and I both Steve and Eder have touched upon it, but let's hear the response from the audience. But I'm really curious with Steve and Eder. So one of you be ready for this, of like, as things changed and, you know, and Eder, as things got tough, like, do you keep it from your board? Do you tell your board? But hold on to that. And then Judy, let's see how the audience responded to board relationships.
Great. So question was, how engaged is your nonprofit or foundation board in COVID era decision making? So 51% very engaged. Board and staff are collaborating together. Over 44% somewhat engaged, board responsive, staff updating, and just over 4% not engaged at all. Board members are not available or not currently participating. So, John, I have one other audience question around Eder's share. So tell me when you want to loop back to that.
Great. Well, we'll do this and then we'll loop back to that question. You know, board members are busy too. I have one of my board members that has 3 kids at home, and meetings are hard to schedule, and his business is crazy, and you know, they're people too. So how do you all, whoever wants to take this, how do you address sort of, yeah, the needs of the organization are crazy and changing, and we need you more than ever, but where are you? I mean, how do you do that? And then how do you decide like how much to share? So like Eder, why don't you take a shot at that, and then happy to hear from others.
Yeah, so I'm in constant communication with my leadership team, just because it has been getting difficult, and a lot of the negativity has gotten more public, and I do need support. I do need to figure out strategic communication styles, not just for the 805 on DocuFund, but for future leaders. I think that's been some of the difficulty. You know, when the students get targeted themselves. For example, being told that they're not Mexican enough or they don't have Mexican value, because they tend to prefer certain ideals or values that they have. And I think I can take the comments, but when it comes to the students, no one should target students, period. Last year, we did a forum in Santa Maria around A3G readiness, college going culture, and there was an article written in the Santa Maria Sun that basically said, "Stop bitching and play by the rules," directly at students. And you know, I take it to my board because it does get infuriating, because if we do respond, we are criticized for how we respond as angry brown people, as troublemakers. So we have to be very thoughtful with the words that we use and how we use them. And so recently, we just, like I said earlier, we just developed a communications committee to really start figuring out what's the best way to communicate our brand, our values, because it's difficult to be able to take all of this at the same time, while also having to deal with like your reality, your family, like what's going on at home. My mom hasn't been working since March. You know, my brother is in and out between jobs, and it's a lot of pressure. And I know that this is the same thing that my staff is going through, and so are the students that we're going through. And so going to our board, I think our board has really developed key tactics that we're using now, and we're finalizing a couple of strategies to be able to communicate and be able to figure out how we respond to these messages. And so back to your question, I try to inform them as much as I can. I don't want to catch them off guard. I don't want to feel like I'm doing things without their support. And also, I want to make sure that we're on the same page. If someone does try to ask them something, I think that that's really important. And because of that, we've built a really strong foundation as a working group. it is difficult. We have a working class board member. They all have jobs. They all have other priorities, and I totally understand that. But those 90 minutes that we're together are very productive, and we try to figure out as much as we can, and during our committee meetings as well.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to turn it to the rest of the committee members in just a second, but Judy reminded me that the question from the audience was, I think, specifically for Eder. So let's just go ahead and take that now, and then I think we've got another 5 to 10 minutes for other members to talk about sort of internal relationships and relationships with board. So Judy, the question for Eder?
Thanks. Eder, acknowledging your leadership and the 805 on DocuFund initially providing relief for families in the wake of the Thomas fire and debris flow. And so the question is, are you finding that the threats and racist statements are being made are different at this time than they may have been during that crisis?
Yeah, so we did a lot of work together in the past, and we got some calls. But I think the political climate and the fact that there's an election and a pandemic happening all at once, and a fight for racial equity in our country has definitely heightened and emboldened white supremacy. And in all honesty, it has been a lot more intense. Maybe because we're feeling the brunt of the storm this time, and maybe we didn't feel it day to day, but the amount of emails that we get on our info at on docufund.org, or the type of comments that we get, or even the personal emails I get, are definitely a lot more emboldened and can easily bring someone down. So I definitely share those as much as I can with our steering committee and kind of figure out strategies. But there's definitely very direct, targeted, hateful comments that are meant to tear people apart, that are meant to really make people stop what they're doing, and really meant to just scare people from doing what they're doing. And with the national election, it definitely speaks volumes to what the administration has been saying for the last 4 years, and what we're seeing on the ground. Because what we're seeing on the ground is definitely hateful and very targeted to communities of color and organizations of color. When we got a call that there was an individual who was calling the supervisors because we were too Latino and too political, that was the first time I heard about it. We had never been targeted like that. And I think that the more that we do this work and the more that it's more public, the more that we're being targeted as an organization that's too political, too brown, too Latino. And people aren't afraid to hurt your feelings, or aren't afraid to make you rethink your strategy. But we just have to keep pushing forward. We just have to keep speaking our truth and being able to put what our values out there, because people are hurting, and COVID-19 has definitely exacerbated inequities in our communities. Undocumented immigrants are the backbone of our economy, and we need to make sure that they're taken care of as much as everybody else. So we're going to keep doing it, and we're going to keep pushing.
So thank you, Eder. I know we're getting into our closing minutes, but the other groups at the table, Towbes and Santa Barbara Foundation and FSA, you're living in these same times too, and the same conversations are in different ways in your organizations happening at all levels, from staff to board. And I'm just curious how you all navigate those same waters, because it's real for everybody.
John, I'll start. I just want to say, Eder, again, thank you for your vulnerability, for your openness. And I'm really sorry that you had to go through, that you and your team have had to go through that. There isn't any room for hateful speech. And I'm very sorry. at the foundation, we lead with our values, with the empathy for our community, and in understanding that although there are differences in opinions and in ideas, we need to have respectful conversations. We need to go ahead and have trust amongst each other, and we really want to make it very, very known that we want you to go ahead and approach us, and that's how we can better serve our community. And so again, there isn't any room for any hateful speech. That definitely should not be happening. And please, we really want to hear from our community. So as I said, we pride ourselves in being approachable. So if you haven't had a conversation with anyone in our team, if you're a nonprofit who's attending right now and you'd like to know more about us, please reach out. We are, as funders, although we are funders and sometimes it seems like it's a transactional relationship, we really do care. Our grant making team, our staff, everyone in our team really does care about our community and providing that support. And we're impacted by this just, the same as everyone else, in the sense that we have a passion for the work that we do. And, when we can't fund certain applications, like that's difficult for us too. Those are difficult conversations amongst our committees. And, that's something that we take home too. And so we really do also ensure that our staff is practicing that self-care, because it is extremely important just on all fronts and all around.
Thank you. Anyone else?
For FSA, yes, for FSA, we have a really great relationship with our board that is engaged and responsive to us. I think the one thing that our board always says after every meeting is thank you. They thank each and every one of us for doing the great work that we're doing, and they acknowledge what we're seeing out in the community, and it's just wonderful when you end a meeting and they're expressing their gratitude when we're trying to express our gratitude, right? The relationship has to happen. Without the funding, we can't serve the people, right? And without the guidance of our board, and we have, I think John had mentioned, people belong to other nonprofits also. So they go back to their nonprofit, they're talking about us, and then we get, like gift cards for like 20 kids to have a $100 shopping spree at one of the local stores, right? And that's another nonprofit giving to a nonprofit. So it's really wonderful to have that type of a relationship with your board, where it really is very communicative, very open, the speech is open. And we do communicate via email with staff and board members, and we try to keep them as current as possible in terms of what's going out there. We have a board meeting coming up Monday. I'm excited to be talking about one of our programs that we haven't highlighted yet, and the great work that those staff are doing working in our community.
Well, thank you. Anybody else? We're getting to the end of our time here.
John, I'll just speak to the Towbes Foundation. Our board has been very engaged. Typically we meet 3 times a year, and since March, we've already met 4 times. These decisions are difficult. These conversations are difficult. These issues are difficult. They're impacting everybody at all levels, and we can't solve these problems without the support of our board and our board members. So, I think that we're in the situation where we are unfortunately not able to give as much as we have in the past. And that also has taken a toll and requires a lot of support and messaging. And to echo Petra's sentiments, we do care. We wish we could, do more. And it's hard on both sides.
Great. Thank you. Well, it's been a great conversation for me. I really appreciate everyone's openness and honesty. These are, challenging times for sure, and in so many ways and at so many different levels. So I appreciate everyone's participation and what you had to say. I hope for people listening that they're sort of threads and jewels or whatever, breadcrumbs, you can choose your own metaphor, that you either had, or this committee, this group of people left for you, that you will take to the day and sort of take to other conversations. Obviously, this is just one day of many. none of these things is really going to be over soon. So the road continues, and I think we all need to support each other and continue to find ways to have conversations and work together differently. I think for so many of us, the reason we came into the nonprofit sector, it is the place where hopefully our community, regardless of your point of view or belief, can come together to do good things and to be that good news. And I think we need to fight to maintain that space and continue to do that. So I thank everyone for participating. I thank everyone for listening. And again, really, you guys are the good news. So thank you for that. And Judy, I think we turn it over to you to talk about the rest of the day.
Great. Thanks, John. Thank you all, each of you, for your really honest sharing this morning. This is exactly what we wanted to elevate, both the complexity, which also means the difficulty of this moment. All the different angles and approaches, and your willingness to to share your personal stories is really powerful. So thank you. Because is there a button I can push for some really loud applause? Hey. So up next for our audience, we have hosted breakout sessions between 10:50 and 11:30, so about 40 minutes. And the program will end, the morning program will end after the breakout conversations. And this whole platform, this site, will stay open all for you to interact. So I'm just going to tell you a couple of ways that you can do that, and then I'll describe to you how to get to your breakout conversation that you might like to be in. So just bear with me for one more minute. When you exit out back into the main room or the lobby, on the left-hand side panel is where you'll be able to control where you're going next. So think about this like a virtual hotel, okay? So you'll go out. If at any time you want to connect with one other person, you can click on the attendees tab and you can find an individual. You can send them a message to connect, which is kind of like a Facebook message. You can set up or request a one-on-one networking. So the two of you could go into your own room, which would look like a Zoom room, and have a conversation. You could set that up or schedule it for another or different time during the day today. And feel free. We want to invite you to stay on the platform during the day. At 5 o'clock, we will be hosting happy hour, and you will, if you're not still logged in, you can re-log in the same way that you did this morning and go to community rooms on the left-hand sidebar, and that will take you to a happy hour option. And from there, we'll describe ways that you can interact for a few minutes between 5 and 6 this afternoon. So we know that everyone is missing right now more frequent connections with one another. So we really encourage you to use this platform if you have time to do so today. So now for the breakouts. We have some very generous volunteer peers of yours that have agreed to host these breakouts. We have a couple folks who could not join us at the last moment today, so our staff will be rotating around to make sure that you have a little bit of support. But please thank these volunteer hosts and partner with them. Take turns sharing in your sessions. Look at listening and learning from each other. So to get to the breakout options, after you exit this session, you will, again, go to that left-hand sidebar and you'll click on the button that says Community Rooms. And from there, you're going to see a series of boxes with different titles in them. Those are your options for the breakout topics. So what we're encouraging you to do is take this high theme of navigating complex decisions and take it into a more specific realm that is relevant to you in your work. The breakouts are limited to 8 people. So if the join button is not lit up blue, that means that room is already full and you can go to another option. Once you're in the breakout room, it's going to feel like a Zoom room, and you can turn on your own camera and your own mic when you get there. And the hosts will welcome you and help guide you through the discussion. Lastly, if you need a break right now, we want to recommend that you choose your breakout room click in to join it, and then take your break and plan to be back in that room by 10:50. But that way you'll already have your place in the room, and you can wait to turn on your camera and your mic when you get back from your break. If you have any questions, remember, event staff is here for you, monitoring the chat. And thank you so much for coming to the morning panel. Enjoy your conversations, and we'll see you at happy hour at 5 o'clock. Thank you all.